I mean, the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we have items we have to do some town business in a special meeting, but before we do, we'll start with the 42 Gardeners Bay wetland and special permit application. I think this is the one we were waiting for the planning board and the
Yes.
CAC to
The CAC has their 4 recommendations. The 4 recommendations that they made back in April 11 is property. And I think they've complied with all of these are the following. Number 1, install a low flow water pump. Number 2, provide automatic pool cover. Number 3, submit a vegetation plan. And that's in accordance with 129.4.1A4. And the 4th one was bring grandfathered irrigation system up to the present code, including the addition of a cistern. Those were the 4 recommendations made on April the 11th by the CAC. And I do believe when we brought this up last week, that we were told that all 4 of these things have been satisfied.
I think they fought us on number 1, install the low flow well pump.
Correct.
They want to maintain the current existing well, which is not low flow. So that's up to us whether we want to mandate that they change the well to a low flow pump or not. They want to keep it as it is.
Right, so let's see what the planning board.
I'm looking to see. I thought I had it in my stack, but
I know for some reason it's missing from my pile.
Stephen, can you find that? No, it wouldn't come from you. It would come from Coco. The planning board on 42 Gardeners Bay.
It's in SharePoint.
It is, okay. I had printed it and marked it up, but
It's in my,
thank you. Grace.
all right. So their recommendations are pretty limited. So they had the following observations. The existing property consists of a single residence with 9 bedrooms, attached garage, accessory structure, detached pool house. The proposed plan will include a single residence with 11 bedrooms, pool house, swimming pool, associated patio, tennis pavilion, tennis court, accessory structure, which includes a living room, kitchen, 2 bedrooms, 2 full bathrooms, 2 terraces, and 2-story detached garage with storage above. The site development is sufficient for the larger house as the lot is more than 3 times the required lot size for AA zoning. The variance from setbacks, there are no variance from setbacks required. Landscaping plan has been submitted, which shows existing and proposed vegetation should provide buffers for on-site privacy and for the adjacent properties. The property is deep and the proposed house is well inward from the street, and it should not be seen as large from the road. The applicant is removing the intrusion into the vegetative buffer and adjacent regulated areas. They are likewise installing 2 new IA sanitary systems and stormwater recharging dry wells. All of these are positive improvements to the property. While this house is larger than the nearest residence, the over 6-acre property can easily support a house of this size. The planning board members recommend approval of this site permit application. And that's pretty much their rundown. I think one of the things we should consider is that if this plan is approved, there needs to be the note put on the deed that they can no longer further subdivide, that it has to, I think that restriction should be put in. So you go, that they can no longer further subdivide the property.
Yeah.
So that needs to be put in, I think, as a condition.
You can go one of 2 ways with that. You could go, one is never, so in perpetuity, they can never subdivide. Or you can do it with planning board, supermajority of the town board or planning board, whichever way you want to go about it. But it's up to you guys. If you want to make it permanent,
I would,
or
it's in my, go ahead.
I would do it in perpetuity, but that's just,
Yeah, I mean, it's based on the size of the lot.
and the amount of development that they're.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
So I would say that it has to stay as is.
Joe Fenora, the low flow pump, can you give us a little thought on that?
5 gallons or less.
We've been generally advocating for lower flow laws to help. Sorry, is that,
Yeah, you go ahead.
feedback?
Nope.
Okay, just me then. We've generally been advocating for low flow pumps in areas where we know the aquifer to be particularly sensitive or thin. It helps reduce the likelihood of upconing, saltwater intrusion, particularly during high demand periods or particularly dry periods. And it's not an obligation of the applicant, but we have been requesting it, and we have successfully passed through a number of applications with the county minimum flow pump of 5 gallons per minute, and then storage on site for whatever is deemed appropriate by the designer, given the size and the expected water demand based on number of bathrooms, fixtures, et cetera.
Megan, thoughts on this one?
Not really. I mean, it's a grandfathered well at this point. I had asked about the depth of groundwater in the well, and it's sufficient. So I'm not, it's not like it's a shallow well per se. So it's really up to our discretion.
But could you put something in there, Stephen, if and when there's a need for a new well, it would have to be low flow?
you have the authority to add conditions as you see fit. If there's a bona fide reason, and there's a nexus to what you're granting as far as a larger structure, then yes.
But how do you
Yeah,
enforce that? Look in the file at the
Right.
time, that they're getting a well.
Say do it now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So what do you do?
With regard to the low flow, it has to do primarily with the pump rate. So a new well doesn't need to be drilled if they have a functioning well. They could just change or modify either the pump or some mechanism that would restrict the output.
So Joe, the downside to the low flow is they'd have to have a storage container. Is that what you're saying?
In most cases, if you go with the minimum 5 gallons per minute, which is what we've done in the past, that's not enough to fulfill the instantaneous demand of water, particularly for larger homes. So there's on-site storage, typically in the basement, and it ranges from a few hundred to maybe 1,000 gallons, depending on the size of the structure and what the designer calculates to be their demand, so that when 3 or 4 people are taking showers at once, they're not all divvying up that same 5 gallons that's coming out of the ground. They're drawing from a larger supply with a booster pump in the house. And then over a longer period of time, the 5 gallon per minute well pump will catch up and restore what was taken from the on-site storage.
We were required this in the Harris application, by the way. I'm reading it up. Well pump shall have a flow rate of 5 gallons per minute and a water storage tank of about between 300 and 400 gallons.
Yeah.
So when we act on this, I would like just 30 seconds to talk to you guys about moving forward with some other things in this discussion, or have it on for next Tuesday.
Well, this isn't a public hearing, so we could discuss it right now.
Well, it doesn't pertain to this particular application necessarily. It's things that there are 8 of the 13 recommendations we made in the Harris recommendation from several weeks ago that apply directly to this conversation.
So then let's apply them, because that's what we're talking about is
Yeah, let's do that now.
developing the resolution for this application.
Which 5 are we missing? I guess.
Well, the 5 was about subdividing the property. A rental, you can't rent for less than 14 days. There was a bunch of other requirements in there, but 8 of them directly dealt with water issues, and I will read the ones that we.
Well, I would argue rental feels,
The water pump shall have a flow rate of 5 gallons per minute and a water storage tank of between 300 and 400 gallons. That was one recommendation. Second recommendation, applicant shall install a cistern for the purpose of irrigation, pool autofill, and for use at the dock.
that cistern needs to be filled with off-island water.
The cistern requirement for irrigation is a minimum of 8,000 gallons. How much additional should you be required for the pool and deck? That was written in the recommendation. So it doesn't specify that,
Mhm.
but it's the next one had to deal with the tennis court being, permeable, but I don't even count that way. The third one is the automatic pool cover, which we seem to be very consistent about. The thing that sometimes bars that from happening is the shape of the pool when they come up with these weird shaped kind of kiddie pools that don't lend themselves to necessarily. So maybe one of the recommendations we have is, make a square rectangular, something that would accommodate an automatic pool cover.
What is the reasoning behind that?
The pool cover does a number of things. The pool cover does the following. It slows down the evaporation rate of water. Number two, the life shelf of chemical that is put in the water is lengthened because it's not burned up as readily. Number three, it keeps the pool cleaner, so that it's less work having to go through that thing of cleaning it out.
Less heating required.
Less heating requirement, yeah. So people put in heaters, obviously, when they keep their pools open. Let's say I'm going to use Columbus weekend as a common time when people close their pools. By mid-September through end September, your pool was normally 85 degrees all summer. It's now 72 degrees, and people say, wow. So they all put on a heater. So from an energy point of view, it saves that. Because if you get a strong sun, even though it only gets to 72 degrees on the air temperature, your pool would heat up to about 80 or 82 degrees. It generates that much heat through the liner. So it does prevent that. There are advantages to it. The fourth one was applicant will install a low nitrogen reducing septic system, which is standard now, which we do automatically. Number five, all stormwater collected in appropriate drainage structures. So that's almost becoming a fixture now that stormwater we're trying to collect and recharge the aquifer. We'll put it into some type of use. The next one is the applicant will use Energy Star certified and water sensitive certified appliances and fixtures within the residence. I'll repeat, applicant will use Energy Star certified and water sense certified appliances and fixtures in the residence. That again is an important one. The next one down, the applicant shall install meters on the structures and cisterns. So actual meters on the cisterns of the water structures. And finally, the last one, the applicant shall install flow logic or similar devices to automatically shut off water in the event of a leak. We've had a few of those where people are away, especially in a community where 75% of the homes are vacant for maybe a large part of the year. If you get a break in a pipe and people don't discover it, you can lose an awful lot of water, into the ground.
But with the meters on structures and all else.
Sister.
In cisterns, yes, on cisterns. So that was kind of, and that was things that Mike Beban was involved with, and Al Dixon were involved with May in developing these restrictions for the Harris and Ember as well. So, and we were pretty adamant. And by the way, in favor of Harris's application, Harris came forward and said, I endorse all of these.
Yeah.
Did without hesitation, do all of them.
Yeah.
So, that's why people said, well, as they're building this house, why were you so forgiving about that? We said, by the way, the front of the property, there could have been another house of equal size. And, based on number of bedrooms and bathrooms and water usage and everything else, this is a far better situation than.
So Jim, why isn't this pro forma recommendations from the committee to us?
Because I don't know. I
Right.
I think they look at each one individually.
Positions that you skipped, the tennis court,
Yes.
because they are putting in a tennis court as well. So I want to make sure that the
Right there,
conditions
yeah.
are the same. So
It's permeable.
permeable with, let's see,
So they don't want
and
an asphalt.
non-irrigated,
Yeah.
permeable and non-irrigated.
Correct.
So I think that's important
Okay.
because if they're going to be redoing their whole irrigation system, you don't need the extra water going to something that's not living.
So
Okay.
that was the extent of them. So I throw that out for what it's worth, just to say that, we're making some headway with water regulations now. Do you want the endorsement of the WAC or the planning board or somebody else and the CAC to endorse these before we act on them, or do we just do it, by virtue ourselves?
I think we can do it, and I think we should have this list handy
Mhm.
and review them, because the tennis court one, until you just brought that up, had passed by me.
Yeah, no, because they're doing the tennis court, they have drainage around the court, but they also, that's something to consider.
Something we have on the to-do list is we asked the WAC to look at our irrigation regulations and law and, how we're going to do that. Part of it is making any grandfathered irrigation systems put in a cistern. So they're current. And then the other part of it is we don't allow cisterns to collect water from the property. And maybe we should
From the roof.
ask them to look at that too. Rather than having it all trucked in, if they can collect their own. Especially on parcel this big, obviously it's getting recharged. So
Right.
anything that comes off the buildings.
It's going to get recharged through the irrigation system.
Yeah, and while we're on this water thing, we got an email from Connie Fisher, who was very concerned about this whole idea of irrigation. And we all got the email, we read it. I responded to you guys about some of my feelings about it, but it might be timely to take a look at some of her concerns that she expresses in that email. That in what Jerry just brought up, I wouldn't have brought it up, but since you brought it up, I think it's a good idea we take a look at it. Some of her concerns in there and take them to heart.
Yeah, actually, Joe and I, when we met with the WAC, kind of charged them.
Okay.
Yeah.
So thank you, Connie Fisher, for your email. It was very well done, by the way.
So basically, we're gonna go
So,
with these,
Yeah, we're gonna incorporate.
just like we did into the other one. Okay, so the only question we haven't really answered is the flow rate. Joe, on the flow rate, on a parcel this big, does it still have the potential to affect neighboring wells if the draw's too much?
Well, I'd have to look more closely to see where the adjacent wells are located, but I think the primary risk here would be impact to this particular well.
they would salt their own well.
Their own well, okay. And Joe's kind of gonna talk about that later in the agenda. Okay. All right, so it's not a hearing, so we're not closing it right now. Just discussing.
Just our,
Are we gonna vote on that?
at the resolution.
Or no?
Let's wait till Joe does his presentation.
Okay.
It's the last item on
Matt
the-
Sherman has his hand up here too. Maybe he's got something to contribute.
Thanks, Joe. Hey, excuse me. I don't have any affiliation with this project, but full disclosure, I am working on a very similar project that's going to be before the town here in a couple of months. It's immediately adjacent to this property. And the reason why I wanted to chime in real quick was more on a generic basis. For a typical residential supply well, that most of them are going to be in the 15 to 20 gallon per minute range. You've got a radius of about 40 feet around that well where it's going to show impacts on groundwater, 40, maybe 50 feet, depending on the soils. So for a property of this size, having a 20 gallon per minute well is going to be, the property is more than large enough to support that well. Obviously with the town with an abundance of caution wants to bring that that gallon per minute rating down just to make sure that there's no negative impacts. But keep in mind too, that when comparing properties, the Harris property with a groundwater thickness of, freshwater lens of 10, 15 feet is a different animal than a property over here in this area where we've got groundwater thicknesses in the 30-foot ballpark. So, the painting all of these waterfront properties with the same brush, it may end up creating some hardships. This property, I don't think it does. The one adjacent that I'll be working on, I don't think it does. But I just want the board to be cognizant of that just because one specific mitigation works in one property doesn't necessarily mean that it's appropriate in all. So just kind of, keep that in mind as you're looking through these things.
Just for information.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I agree that Matt's a wealth of information. However, this is a work session and we really can't take comments from anybody. I think that's the rules.
Okay. Okay, so we're gonna move on.
We're on
What are we doing with flow?
with flow
Give
rate.
me an answer. What are we doing with the flow rate? Are we gonna leave it the way it is?
I'm in favor of this stricter requirement.
Me too, along with the tanks.
Water storage tanks.
Meg, come up.
I'm thinking, Jerry.
Well, we're not voting on it today.
No, we're not voting on it. I'm just looking at all the surrounding well locations and things like that.
That's what I was just looking for.
Why we
Where is
To think, Meg,
Yeah, I would want to be.
Take whatever time I need.
too.
I would like,
Nobody's waiting.
Joe, I would like some kind of definitive report from you on this. But
Yeah, admittedly, I'm shooting a little bit from the hip. I'm not totally familiar with the application details, and I'd be happy to review the documents you have and make a more concise recommendation.
more comfortable choose
That's fine.
professional recommendations. Okay?
Yes, I mean, I think it's definitely more necessary on low-lying areas with shallow wells that
Exactly.
really do siphon in some water.
Right.
So I mean, there are certain properties that we do need to assess differently, but I'm looking at it too, and it's the lower elevation, so there's things to
Well,
look
and
at.
we're also gonna hear, right,
Well, I have the
Yeah.
well data in my
Right.
monster bag somewhere, so I'll find that. and look at
the
it.
reason I'm kind of stalling is, when Joe gives his report, we do have incidents of, salt in some areas currently.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
40-foot wide lens.
yeah, right.
true.
Okay.
Conservation should become the order of the
Yep.
day.
Just one comment I'd like to make. This is sort of new information that'll be injected in. The hearing was closed.
Right.
So we're supposed to only take information into account that was in the record. So if we were gonna take a report from Joe, the applicant should have the ability to review that report and counter it. So if you want to take,
I'm not asking Joe for site
Specific,
specific. I'm
no.
asking for this. If we're talking about making a policy going forward, do we have to address across the border? Do we look at each one individually in the aquifer and,
You mean for the low flow pump usage?
yes,
but again, you're taking his information to make a decision on an application. That's, the record's been closed. So
see,
technically,
this is why I hate this closing these things. But every time we discuss something, it comes up like this then. And now we can't discuss it because it's closed.
you could have closed it subject to 30-day written comment. You could have taken the written comment and then the applicant would have had an opportunity to respond to that written report. So it's either we can make an application to reopen the hearing if you want to take in new information. That can happen. Or the applicant can ask based on the outcome of the report to have it reopened and ask, but you could do it sui sponte and ask for it to reopen. So.
Okay, what is that?
That means on your own motion. So you don't have to wait for the applicant. All right.
Well, yes, in time of the essence here for the applicant, do we have any sense of that? Should we?
We're not acting on it today anyway.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, we do have recommendations from the CAC for a low flow pump.
Right, absolutely. You can rely on that.
Yes.
But to have Joe do a more
Requiring
expansive report.
Yeah, and that's what we're asking for, though. It's a more expansive report.
Yeah, and that's, so if you want to use that to make a decision, arguably we'd have to reopen the hearing.
I mean, I don't necessarily think we need that to make a decision based
No, I
on
think-
precedent and the
I think we
recommendations
just
that were made.
Make it simple and just support the CAC's recommendation.
Right.
And the other information will be good
Too.
information moving forward,
Okay,
you know?
sounds good.
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna move on to our next, actually, the next two agenda items. Jim and I last week attended the East End Supervisors and Mayors meeting. We had a couple of presentations. Also, Fred Deal spoke, gave us some updates. I asked Jim to, go off basically what presentation made to us was, then follow that up with the Peconic Estuary Partnership that Jim's the chairman of the government committee on.
All right, so we did meet in Greenport at the American Legion Hall, by the way, which the mayor was very proud that they fixed up without taxpayer money out of
Did you
donation.
roller skate?
We didn't roller. Very came with the roller skates. I said, don't.
Forgot your knee
Not
pad.
covered. He didn't have the knee pads or the helmet.
And his walker.
Both ones.
So we went upstairs for the meeting. It was very nice lunch. I just want you to know that 5A East End supervisors of Southold, Southampton, East Hampton, Riverhead, and Shelter Island, all represented. The mayors of Quogue, East Hampton, Greenport, North Haven, Sagaponack, Sag Harbor, Southampton, West Hampton Beach, Deering Harbor, wasn't there, but it's part of that, and West Hampton Dunes, all part of the East End supervisors. And so without any further ado, the Supervisor Schneiderman gave us a roll call and introductions. Second thing that happened was we talked about Save the Sound, Plum Island update. And Louise Harrison did a brilliant job, I may add, and I think I circulated some of this information to you. If I haven't, I can circulate it to you right away. Plum Island is unique. This has been undisturbed since 1952, except for the lab area on the western shores. It composes 822 total acres, to include 228 different species of birds. That's that way. If you're a birder like I am, 228. That's 1/4 of the total number of bird species in the entire United States are frequent Plum Island. That's a pretty high statistic. The biodiversity is amazing. In the winter, there could be as many as 600 seals that occupy the rocks around the island, one of the largest seal haulouts in all of southern New England. The town of Southold has been responsible for helping to protect the future of Plum Island, and they've done a magnificent job, I may add. They have, of course, everybody realized we housed a high security federal lab and animals for testing on that property for a good number of years. It was decommissioned years ago. That 125 acres of property is part of the research district, all right, of the 822 acres. So that's what comprises that. The role of the Homeland Security at Plum Island ended pretty much with 9/11. I think 9/11 changed things around a lot there, and they realized that to secure Plum Island with the amount of research that was going on there, the potential of biological warfare is extraordinary. And I think the federal government did an assessment, and that's why they moved the lab to Kansas, right in the heartland in the middle of the United States, surrounded by prisons, because I've been in Kansas. And if you're in Leavenworth, there are 5 prisons just in Leavenworth itself. But it's obviously a lot easier to secure it when it's in the middle of the country. Moving forward, they want to restrict the humans if they can, in fact, promote the ecological diversity in the island is home to 111 different species of animals. The various groups that are in support in making Plum Island a national monument recognize the need to enable the public to have some limited access to the island in the future. Past and possible future concerns. The federal government putting Plum Island up for auction to the highest bidder. That's what originally happened there. The thinking was they were going to put it up for auction, use the money, the billions of dollars that they get for that auction, and help offset the cost of the new lab in Kansas. Since then, I'm happy to report that the U.S. Congress actually did something right, and they've withdrawn that. So that is not going to happen. Doesn't mean that it can't happen again. And I think that was the whole part of the presentation, that if all else fails, and this is why we're bringing this to the attention of all islanders, so we're just a stone's throw away from Plum Island, is to be concerned about the future of Plum Island. And let's try to put our, and I have a course of action that you can follow here. The fear and concern is real once again, and has gotten the attention of the United States Congress. Plum Island is a perfect candidate for the preservation under President Biden's America the Beautiful campaign. The goal is to get the president, the current president, to declare Plum Island as a national monument. So Louise asked all the 5 East End towns to compose a letter. Jerry's already composed a letter, sent the letter. I composed a different letter. I'm going to attach my letter to that. I'm going to hopefully, Christina, be able to put my letter up and the facts about Plum Island, put them on the website and encourage anybody. And I know it's a little late, but better late than never. And they'll probably be, probably give people a week to 10 days to compose a short letter to the president, trying to urge him to declare this a national monument. And that would be the goal. Do I have any questions or comments on that? What we're trying to do here? Okay, so that was the first thing.
Just real quick on that, it was noted that Southold, the town of Southold, is very proactive in their zoning regarding Plum Island.
Right.
They specifically addressed the ferry zone, specifically addressed Watkins Island. So
Yeah. I even asked the question about would they cut back on the lab in the lab district and do far less intensive testing and do, to save jobs on the East End. And that wasn't definitely resolved. I don't know if they're intending on doing that, but anything of a dangerous nature, of high security nature, highly classified stuff is being moved to Kansas. The bike share program, that's being moved to next September 14th meeting at East Hampton. And Jerry will report back on that on the bike share program, which is something we're all concerned about. The fourth item was making renewable energy affordable. Lynn Arthur, she's the Choice of Community Power local organizer. I have her email address and phone number. The two major topics were the CCA, which stands for Community Choice Aggregation, and CDG, Community Distribution Generation. The question, what are the new opportunities that the CCA presents? Southampton Town, guided by its CCA administrator. Notice the big town that was separate administrator and just does this with public support from other legislators, made a case for the change on Long Island. Note, Assemblyman Thiel, CCA bill signed by Governor Huffle in December 2021. Compliance requires a Long Island PA, that's the public authority, the power authority, all right, to adopt the CCA program elements and all its enhancements. And LIPA has been very reluctant to do this. As pointed out by presented by Lynn, this is done throughout the state. Long Island is the only place in New York State where we have but one choice. It's LIPA or nothing. And they're trying to change that. So Fred is very much involved in that. It says no 2022 CCA/CDG. Solar paired with battery fuel cell lease revenue. Municipal board determines distribution over 20 years of electrical utilities and bill grant credits. And he talks about bill credits. I didn't quite understand all of it, but 60% of it, I think, goes to the CCA members, and 40% of it goes to the municipality or small businesses. That's how they do it. Next steps, we need more information, which they hopefully will supply the East End supervisors with. And I would think that the larger towns like Southampton and East Hampton will be probably on the doorstep because the town is so much larger and it has so many more resources of local government to be able to do this. But we'll sit back and we'll take copious notes on what they're doing and what works and what doesn't work. A local law authorizing your municipality to participate in a CCA program, piggyback on existing CCA programs, and issue an RFP for a CCA administrator. I don't think we're nearly there yet. But let's just learn from the from the people around us. And other business.
Jim, just to follow up on that one, we had, I'm not sure who was the town board or just the Green Options Committee had a presentation for community choice aggregation that Mike Devon, started for us. And it's a great program. Obviously, it works everywhere else in the state, but LIPA is the big, bugaboo here. It's going to be hard to get anything. So I have to look and see if we did any resolutions that we would, become involved if and when. So it's definitely something we have to stay on top of.
Yeah, and those utility bill credits, by the way they use them is age group of above 65, veterans, EMS workers, fire department workers, volunteers. Southampton has seen a 10% reduction in energy bills.
Mhm.
Doesn't sound like a lot of money, but if your energy bill is $500-600 a month, it's an extra $50 to $60 in your pocket. So it's worth looking at.
Yeah, Green Options was talking about this, I want to say 2 months ago. We were going to have them come in and do another presentation to kind of update us.
Yeah.
But there were too many things that were in transition. So we're like, okay, wait until this is finalized with LIPA, wait until, everything's solid, and then have them come back and do another presentation. So Green Options is kind of on top of it and looking to ask for a spot on the agenda to do another presentation with the updated info.
Yep.
So.
The last few items are important. Mark Woolley, Congressman Zeldin's office, reported on two primary things: the FAA and the East Hampton Airport, the North Shore flight routes. They would like their due to end and want them extended. They're trying to get Albany to pass something with the FAA to make sure that they continue, because it has been a godsend for us to have them over water as opposed to over land. So that is supposed to happen actually this week. The other thing he talked about is 14 East End Suffolk County projects. 7 are now being funded and 7 are awaiting funding. Those I would imagine are federal fundings that Zeldin probably oversees in Congress that they're trying to get through. So we do have a voice that's working for these projects here on the East End.
We're one of the 7 weights.
Yes, right. Fred Thiel's comments, CPF, 77 million is the number that East End collected in 2019, $77 million. The next year in 2020, the 77 became $210 million, better than 1/5 of a billion. CPF has been in existence for 24 years, since 1998. He discussed the accelerated building on the East End during the last 2 to 3 years. He also discussed water issues measures to clarify and reconstitute CPF properties, which Jerry has been talking to him about, and historical properties and water issues in general. That was one of his comments. His other comment is about LIPA. He didn't speak very highly of LIPA. LIPA began, in 1986. Their current contract runs through 2025. The need to scrutinize the contract before re-signing it is huge. There's a lot of political pressure to look at labor issues, debt issues, performance issues, particularly performance issues, which they're not living up to in the contract itself. So that's a bone of contention. Not demonstrating sufficient progress in these areas, which need to be addressed as soon as possible. There are a new 8-member commission, 4 from the New York Assembly, 4 from the New York Senate, and it's bipartisan. What has worked in the past and what is currently not working, to include rising costs, to try to lower costs for people here on Long Island in general. Third item we talked about was the amendment of the open meeting laws, which we have discussed moving forward. Fourth item he talked about was a new bill on option of towns to lower speed limits. I know that's been, when I was president of Silver Beach, we talked about the lowering of speed limits from 35 to 25 on Avenue and on Branda Parkway and a few other places. And, I know Chief is, I don't know if he's on the call now, that, that hasn't always gone over well. However, this new bill will give towns the option to identify dangerous streets and lower speed limits. That will be without getting approval above. So that would be big. Fifth item we discussed was the growing of kelp. Expanding existing areas, additional leasing opportunities in state bottoms. They're expanding that whole thing. A sixth item he talked about was statewide protection of Native Americans, Indigenous Americans, and burial grounds, which is a timely topic, which we've discussed here, particularly when it comes to Shelter Island and Sylvester Manor. He then last comment he talked about was accessory dwelling buildings, leaving these decisions to local governments, providing a carrot for taxpayers. He talked big about what can local governments do to provide additional carrots. He did. I didn't write them all down, but we can get them like that from him if we ask.
Kind of what we talked about.
Yeah.
Yeah, potential tax breaks.
I have an article actually in the last, what is it? The towns.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Paper we get. There's a whole 3, 4, 5 page thing on ADUs and how they can be used. And yes, it has all that in there. So.
And grants for the IA system.
Yeah. And the other thing he tried to encourage by doing this with accessories is a lot of times this is done illegally. He feels by putting the carrot out there and let's do it legally.
Right.
And
Let's make sure everybody's adhering to it and do it legally and get rewarded for it.
And the big part of legally means bringing it up to code. So it's safe.
Correct.
So it's
Bringing it up to code was a big thing that he emphasized. The last speaker was Jody, talked about the new maps and redistricting of the East End and redistricting throughout New York State. Fred Thiel would now represent both forks, the South and the North Fork. So basically everything from Riverhead out east he would be representing, which is different. And the other one was on Deer and Tech, creating a new group to study the growing problem on the East End. They are experiencing huge problems in Southold and Riverhead area with deer. I talked to Bo afterwards. I brought his name up at the thing. I said, you want the expert on Long Island, maybe in New York State, it's Bo Payne. And we do have a deer management program. We do have a tick management program, and it's better than any other program I've ever seen. We talked about the flyover. I volunteered that information for one reason. I want you to, I discussed it with Jerry on why I brought that up, is that when we do the flyover, it's a $25,000 investment on our part to get the 6-hour flyover. Not only does it determine the number of deer you have, but tell me where the deer are. It also helps you in a strategy in the next year, trying to target those deer to beat the goals of the committee to cut the deer herd in half. My point of bringing it up to other communities was it will be cheaper for us in the long run if I can get North Haven to do it and maybe pockets of Southold in different communities. And then we bring the aircraft here. Monday he does Shelter Island, Tuesday he does, and he's got 5 jobs lined up, with good weather in January,
And you
February.
have an extra bedroom for the pilot.
And we got the extra bedroom for the pilot, so we would definitely make that happen. So that's why we brought that thing up. But I will get Christina a copy of my letter and the information on Plum Island to the website. So people, again, I would like to give them an opportunity, a week to 10 days to get that letters back to town hall here. We would consolidate all those letters in a thing and send them to the people. Not only send it to the White House, we would also send it to the lady who was asking us to do this. All right. That's it on that.
Jim, it was a very good meeting. Before you move on to the PEP, just 2 things. One, I'd like to think about putting ADUs on the agenda so we can really start discussing how we're going to do it.
Like permanently until we
Yes.
do something.
Yeah, exactly. Because again, ADUs are existing accessory dwelling units. It's not like people are going to build them. And then the second one that you kind of touched on, Joe and I have been in touch, Joe Fenora and I have been in touch with Cornell Cooperative Extension about maybe some potential aquaculture projects here on Shelter Island with the kelp.
Good.
So Joe's, we're not ready to, make a presentation yet, but we're
Working on it.
working on it. Yeah.
Just to break up the agenda, if we move to Joe on number 4, come back to me, just to,
Sure.
I'm gonna want to get some water.
Sure.
Hey, Jim, you lower the AC.
Look, lower it. You want to hold it.
Lower.
Whoa.
That would be my
Okay,
fault.
Joe, we'll go with you next if
It
you don't
was
mind.
very cold at 7:30 this morning. Yeah, it's 7:30 this morning. I was like, where is this set at? So I'm sorry. I never put it back up again.
We put Joe on to give a report on the water level. I don't know if anybody was paid attention. The governor put Suffolk counties on the drought alert
List
stage right now.
level.
It's just to be aware, and we've been working on our drought restrictions. So I asked Joe to come in and give us a report. Actually, we have a lot of water, but some of the areas are a little concerning. So Joe?
Thank you. Yeah, so we're drifting into some early level drought alerts. Now we have messaging coming from the state and the National Drought Institute that includes our county. In the past few weeks and months, the warnings have been trending around our area, so it's really no surprise. We thought we'd actually be in these areas by now, but they've just recently occurred. So the WAC and the engineering department is actively monitoring conditions on island. These forecasts and warnings from from the state and the National Institute are more broadly based, and we're looking closely at well height data that's collected from the USGS across our island. And generally speaking, our aquifer levels are maintaining pretty well. We've had an unseasonably dry past few weeks. We've had a couple of intense rainstorms, which don't typically benefit aquifer levels as much because the ground is so dry, the water comes so fast and not as much is able to permeate down through. But generally speaking, our aquifer heights are low, but not in any position where we're particularly worried. According to our proposed drought policy, quantitatively, our aquifer levels are not quite at a limit where we would start imposing any sort of mandatory restrictions. However, we are receiving increasing reports of chloride contamination and general decreasing water quality in private wells, particularly on the Ram Islands and in the Montclair areas. Most of this data that we've received is anecdotal. It's private well data that either water operators or testing companies are sharing with us, but for the most part, there's a relatively big blind spot as to the details of those. That fact doesn't surprise us when we are considering how dry it's been, but we don't have reason to believe that the issues with decreasing water quality and chloride contamination are widespread. They seem to be, and looking simply qualitatively at this, they seem to be cases of isolated overuse, whether accidental or intentional, situations where folks are perhaps running their wells for extended period of times to top off their pools, or are watering more than usual because of the dry conditions and trying to keep up with landscaping efforts. So we really believe at this stage that there's no cause for mandatory alarm or mandatory restrictions, but we do want to watch this closely. I've checked in with Suffolk County water operators for information on adjacent aquifers, specifically on the North and South Fork, and their report was more or less the same as our findings, that in general, the aquifer levels are lower than average, but they're not seeing significant cause for concern. Their efforts in reducing water consumption are trying to limit peak demand. It can only get water out of the ground so fast. The dry conditions are causing people to irrigate more than usual, and that sudden surge for water demand, typically in the early morning, stresses infrastructure, and their concern generally was making sure that they had enough supply available in case there was, God forbid, something like a brush fire or a widespread fire where they needed access to a lot of water in a short period of time. So they're seeing similar conditions as us. I would urge the town board to revisit the drought policy so that we can have a mechanism in place to spread some public messaging about our conditions. I think the WAC and other committees are working on some procedures for that as well. But at this stage, we would recommend really implementing a policy and an approach that shares this information with residents and islanders so that they're aware of the condition. And we have a very limited number of irrigation users, but irrigation tends to overwhelmingly be the largest consumption of our aquifer water. So any limits we can propose on those types of users are things that we're looking at, and general know-how across the rest of the island to just be mindful of their water usage, and we'll continue to monitor the situation.
Joe, is there any reason for homeowners with wells to be mindful of their uses during peak demand? So, if we could put it off watering, before 6 a.m. and after 8 p.m. or laundry, or does it just not matter because we're all individualized?
Typical domestic use does not have a significant impact on demand. And generally, folks wake up and take a shower and maybe wash some dishes and things. But that's not the kind of demand that's really causing problems with either infrastructure or the aquifer. The kind of demand that stresses that equipment is heavy water use, like filling pools or watering lawns, where you're expending, order of magnitude times water uses as you would for what's going on inside your home. And the cases where we think we're seeing, potability issues and overuse are folks who we suspect are leaving the hose in the pool to fill up the last couple of feet, or not necessarily even doing something that's against our irrigation policy or water use policy, but they're just expediting their withdrawal of water for an extended period, and that's what's causing these quality issues locally.
Okay. Thanks.
Any questions for Joe? I think just with the potential salting of some of the wells on the Rams and Montclair, I think we really need to look at this low pump as a prerequisite or almost anything we do going forward.
Yeah, the one comment I have too, with all the building that we've had in Silver Beach, I don't know about other communities, but we probably have 15 to 20 new houses or renovated houses in the area with tremendous amount of plantings, new trees, new bushes. When you put out the hose out there, it just, you could waste a lot of water. I would urge everybody that when you put in new plantings, trees and bushes, water them by hand. You can target right to the root. I do it myself. I hand every other day, unless it rains. With the new plantings, I only have one area, the corner of the property that I've changed, but I hand do it. I can do it in 12 minutes. And that's doing 30, 40 plants in that area, as opposed to putting hoses out there and going for 2 hours with a fine mist coming around. I just urge people, a lot more can be done when you target it by hand, especially in this hot weather. If you don't water a little bit, you're going to lose it. Whatever you've invested in trees and bushes are going to die. So, but I would urge you to do it by hand. Even if you have to pay somebody to come in to do it by hand, it's well worth it.
One thing that we're not doing this summer because we don't have the intern is we're not on the irrigation systems. We're not doing the salinity tests. And I think that that's a mistake. Joe, I think it's maybe we can get together with the irrigation committee and you and the building department. They have the historical data just to see like reinstituting that program in some fashion.
Good point.
I actually have that on my list of things that we need to circle back to.
Yeah, because that gave us good information in the past. It was, self-done within the town. So right now, the homeowners are supposed to submit their salinity results with their permit applications, but having random tests throughout the summer, we did.
I think we talked about having Michael do them.
Yeah.
Or at least I talked to Mary Ellen about it, having Michael follow up with that.
Because
So I don't know.
As we get into August, and there was not this past couple of years, but a few years ago, things got dry. We did shut down a couple of systems. So I think we need to do that sooner rather than later.
Good. Okay, I'm ready. Jim?
Yeah, getting back to the local government committee meeting and the County Estuary Partnership. We met last week for a couple hours about funding opportunities. When I took over the chairman position about 3 months ago, the first thing I asked the County Estuary was to please put this on the agenda. My goal was to get all 5 East End towns working together to identify federal, state, county, and local grants that are available for specific projects that we're working on. This handout that I gave everybody, you have a hard copy, and I also emailed it to everybody, has 25 different grant applications. 14 of them are federal, 6 of them are state, 3 of them are county, and 2 of them are local. What I have as a result of this meeting, which I'll report on as when we go around the table, is Jennifer is going to take this, go through it in the next few days and pick out the ones that specifically are geared for the projects that we're working on. So rather than bore everybody and attempt to go through all these 25 different applications. However, I will talk about something that we did this morning that I worked on the last couple of days over the weekend for having a life. Basically, it was trying to identify the top 10 capital planning projects that we're working on. And basically, they're not in any order. I did them. Yeah, I mean, yeah. I mean, basically, but I'm going to break this in this. I'm going to get back to it. But the top 10 planning projects that we're looking at alphabetically is ADA compliance. And that doesn't qualify for BEP. And that's going to be something that we're going to work on. Community housing, again, is something that we have to work on. But the ferry terminals and working on flood mitigation measures definitely qualifies. And I'll talk about that in my report. Fresh Pond qualifies. Fit Center, I put on there because I think it's a new project that we're going to start to work on. Location of a new Fit Center, and I'll talk about that in the report. The municipal wastewater treatment project definitely is on there. Real Point, not shovel ready yet, but is on there. Shelter Island Heights Property Owners Corporation Heights Treatment Plant upgrades and the recharge, not shovel ready yet, but it's on the list. West Neck Water District and Suffolk County Water Authority Management are redoing the infrastructure. That is definitely on the list. So the committee identified the top 3 as being the municipal wastewater treatment as number 1. And then, of course, West Neck Water and Fresh Pond as being 2-2 or 2-3 or 3-2, however you want to, all 3 of those are projects that we want to send to the Peconic Estuary Partnership. Jen has been working on this. We have things in the works already, but putting another set of eyes on this. And also the other beauty of it doing is it's one thing to identify the grants. It's another thing to get support for those grants. So by me giving it to the PEP and all the political power that is involved with the PEP, we stand a much better shot at getting these things approved and getting them grant funded. So that's the purpose of why we're doing what we're doing. So our job by this week was to identify the top 3 to 5. So I have listed our top 3, which we as a committee agreed to this morning. And I have numbers 4 and 5 with a line below it, as we're not shovel ready with this, but these are high priority items, but we're just not shovel ready. So that's basically where we stand with that. And I know that was a short report, but I'll cover the rest of it.
Yeah.
I'll cover and I did the minutes this morning, that they were all done. So I can report on it, when we go around the table.
So just real quick, on the top projects, the municipal wastewater system treatment plants, that's in the works.
Yeah.
We have a grant that we're finishing up on that.
2. We've got 2 in the
right.
works and a 3rd one.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, so now we're looking for the money to actually get it done. The other 2A and 2B, West Neck Water, this grant is really not townwide grant. It's to help very specifically with the West Neck Water District. And what we're trying to do is Suffolk County Water Authority told the members of West Neck Water District that this is what it's going to cost to do, and this is what it's going to cost over the years to pay for it. So we said we'd like to try to find funding to help out with that. And we want that funding specific to Shelter Island, not to Suffolk County Water Authority, that they can use it anywhere. So that's funding we're looking
For
for.
West Neck Water, we already submitted the use plan, supports access to future funding, both federal stimulus funds and through the New York State EFC. So we're working in both of those veins to get that done. And in terms of the municipal wastewater, current status, the engineering report has been approved by the New York State DEC. We submitted the New York State EFC IUP grant, and the application for Suffolk County and and another one to the New York State DEC. So Joe said, we will be scheduling an update for the public within the next 2 weeks to update the public on the new engineering report with the new site and everything else. So that probably will either be next Tuesday or the Tuesday after. We're kind of like under the gun a little bit to get that done. So I know Joe met this morning with several of the people that live around that new site, did a wonderful job. I think the people up there with a smile on their face, and every question that we'll pose to them, I think Joe gave a good, logical answer to and alleviated a lot of their concerns. I think that my colleagues are in the room are listening to that. So I think you can't walk away with the same
Yep, absolutely.
impact.
Okay, and then the last 2A is Fresh Pond. Again, we have the engineering report done. Now we're looking to see if it's going to be a feasible thing for us to do it.
Yes. And still working on ferry terminals, you know, we're still working with both ferry companies, trying to feel who's out there about mitigation plans for the flooding in those areas.
Jim, what's our role there when you say we're working with the ferry companies?
You know, Jerry,
It has to do with hazard mitigation.
yeah,
Getting off the island
yeah.
in an emergency.
Right,
So even though they're private companies,
right.
we have to consider what's, our responsibility, getting on the boats,
Yeah.
being able to get on the
Is
boats.
there a financial commitment on the part of the town then, or we're just?
That's what we're doing now is we're looking into funding and,
Yeah, that's yet to be determined, you know.
Yeah.
But the 3 hazardous mitigation plans that we're working through the HMGP opportunities, DR 4085, DR 4480, and DR 4615. DR stands for disaster relief. We're working on 3 different opportunities with the South Ferry and with the North Ferry Company. Again, as Jerry said, the flooding has become more pronounced and more frequent. We've documented that. We have pictures, dates, times where the ferry has shut down, where for years that didn't happen decades ago because of high tides and extreme high tides. We don't necessarily need even a major storm in order to get that kind of flooding that prohibits our ambulance from getting off island. So that is something. And of course, the PEP has installed a new thing at South Ferry, which will record ongoing tides, water temperature, all kinds of impurities in the water, temperature of the water, all kinds of data are being collected there. And that was at no cost to us. It's just a collection point for the Peconic Estuary Partnership to gather additional information about a number of things. Sea rise information. Also, it helps in terms of shellfish, in terms of us getting a better handle on what's the causative effects. They have them set up throughout the Peconic Estuary so they can compare that data. Why is it more advantageous to throw shellfish out east? Well, logically, 2 things. Water temperature is less because we get a better flow, and the better exchange of water because we're closer to the ocean and where as opposed to being closer to Riverhead where you don't get that kind of flushing.
I think North Ferry monitors the same information.
Yes, yeah.
They have one right outside their slope.
So BJ, what we're looking at is possible federal funding of 90%. Then the 10% will either come from the town or with the ferry companies.
Definitely public interest.
Yeah.
But it helps, the public-private partnership can bring in the money that
But they can't get independently.
keep our ferry fee rates down and things like that,
Right.
and keep public access.
No, I'm going to say that rather tabled up. I had some other comments about grants, but it involves ADA stuff and stuff like that.
Okay.
No, it's good there. This weekend, this Saturday, from 3 to 5, the Community Housing Fund Advisory Board is having another open house. It's going to be at the Presbyterian Church from 3 to 5. So you can submit questions, comments, input for the housing plan that they're getting started to develop. So working on a housing plan.
They are starting to develop in concert with the entire community, if you will show up.
Thank you. Yeah, so just a heads up, that is coming up. August 20th is the Green Expo and the Craft Fair. Comprehensive plan will have a table at the Green Expo along with a lot of the town committees. So if you want to learn more about what some of our committees are doing, if you want to give some input for the comprehensive plan, we'd welcome it. We'll have copies of chapters. We'll have things for you to look at. We'll have things for you to fill out. I will be putting a box in the hall at Town Hall so that if people have written input and they're not comfortable putting it in on the computer, they can write it and put it in the Dropbox. And I'll talk to the housing group about doing the same thing. I think they were interested in that as well. And then our next CPAC meeting is August 22nd at 6:30. And that's all I have at the moment.
Well, it takes me 1 minute to finish this other thing up.
Okay.
All right, on the capital planning, one thing I didn't cover was the ADA compliance. As people realize, the town made a commitment several years ago to develop an ADA plan for all the town assets and buildings. We've started that. If you notice, everything we've done, whether you're talking about Wade's Beach bathroom or the new bathroom down at Crescent Beach, or what we're going to be doing within the next month across the street at the Shelter Island Community Center, we're going to be putting in ADA ramps and things like that, focusing mainly on access in and out of buildings. Does that satisfy all the ADA compliance? The answer is no. But the first thing you got to be able to do is get people in wheelchairs or, that are handicapped to be able to get in and out of buildings. The two most archaic buildings that we actually own are Justice Hall and Police Headquarters. So this year for 2022, we are hiring a Pam Hospital. Yeah, and she's going to come on board, and we budgeted $50,000. It's going to be slightly under that to develop a plan for accessibility and ADA compliance for police headquarters.
We did put out an RFP, by the way.
Yes, we did.
Yeah, okay.
All right. And so that's done for 2022. So we'll get a complete report from her and we'll present it to the public on that. Next year, we would like to do, and I talked to Jim about this, Chief Reed, about this, is then move our attention next door to Justice Hall. And for 2023, do the same thing. Put that in the budget, keep that line item in the budget. I talked to Amber about this morning. And then do that same planning for Justice Hall. These are buildings that are coming in on 90 years of age, 85 years of age right now. So, and then in 2024, take those two buildings, put it out for bid, and let's do both buildings at the same time to get a better price deal on, rather than doing one building 1 year and then skipping a couple of years and doing another building. If you get both buildings that need to be worked on from that point of view, we'll do that. And you got to remember, the town has already made a major investment in roofs, new windows, new brick pointing, painting of the buildings. So the exterior of the buildings look mighty fine. But it is a problem when you can't bring to trial somebody in a wheelchair and get them safely in and out of the building. Bob Stefano used to talk about that all the time, of holding court on the front lawn or the side lawns because we couldn't get people. Yeah, we couldn't get people in and out of that building. So it has to be done. And we won't stop there. We'll make sure that as we move forward, again, it's a good faith effort on the part of town of Shelter Island to recognize that there are people with disabilities. People with disabilities have the right, whether we design our new fit center, whether we, eventually have to move out of the school and move to another place, it's got to be handicap accessible. That'll be an important piece as we go forward. Anything we do now that's new, definitely ADA considerations will be put into that. So that's a piece that I just wanted to get across to you. The multi-year capital plan, we're looking to finalize that probably in late fall of this year. The community center, the front porch across the street. I talked to Brian about this. There'll be new signage, but it'll be done on the building. That building will be officially called the Shelter Island Community Center. Not going to be the Legion or it's going to be the Youth Center. It's going to be the Community Center. On the side of the building, there'll be a separate sign that reads Legion Post 281 or Mitchell Post 281 or American Legion Post 281 or American Legion Mitchell Post 281. Dave Clark and him will work with Brian on developing that signage for the side of the building because they obviously are in the bottom of that basement of that building. But it's been all air conditioned, It's all been renovated. Going to make some additional soundproofing, over there. But once we do the name of the game, what we're doing is new roof, new overhang. Brian is getting a new estimate this week. The two estimates that we got so far were over budgeted we thought were too high. Brian has got a lead on somebody else that thinks that they could come in, lower. Front door will be replaced with a big kind of bar. Front steps will be done. That's awarded to Bruce Kaplan, who's a local guy right here off the island who does that kind of work, concrete work. He'll be using bluestone as we use for the top of the steps, like we've done over at the other to match the work that we did at the other two buildings. And the ADA ramp will then follow that. Hopefully that'll all be done. I'm thinking by mid-September, that'll all be done and that building will be pretty solidly put together. And I think that, the last thing we did, we had a special guest this morning. That was our part-time town social worker, Lucille Borges. She came in to discuss the $25 million available with the opioid grant funding available, and we talked about application process for community groups, nonprofits, and county agencies. This discussion, this grant has somewhat wide open opportunity that focuses upon education, prevention, community involvement, and/or treatment programs, any combination of those things. It can be community-based, which also involves school and law enforcement, as well as medical support. These programs can address both alcohol and drug programs, especially focusing on opioid use and abuse. Discussions include strengthening of families, community education, partnerships, working with Eastern Long Island Hospital, and utilizing the existing Health and Wellness Alliance Group. Important, Jim Colligan will contact Chief Reed, Dr. Dolger, Jennifer Massiano Hingham, which wants to be involved, Lucille wants to be involved, to set up a Zoom meeting this coming week to talk about an initial plan. Since we have a drop dead date a few weeks in August, we're going to have to put a very simple plan together to meet the needs of this coming. I'd like to keep that committee together for 2023 to get a much more detailed plan that has greater opportunities. But this opioid problem is simply not going away. And I feel as a former health educator for 35 years, it's our duty to do the best we possibly can. Educate and try to prevent, drug usage and drug abuse here on Eastern Long Island, particularly here on Shelter Island. If law enforcement is much more geared for that, as you know, in the last few months, there have been a number of major arrests here on the East End for people that have been wheeling and dealing and literally killing people with opioid sales. So those people are going to jail, thank God, and they need to be responsible for their actions. But it's an epidemic. It's a heck of a problem here on Long Island, not just here on the East End. And actually, it's a nationwide problem. If we have a bad problem, you go to West Virginia, southern parts of Ohio, where the opiate rates are off the charts, absolutely off the charts. So we need to do a better job at trying to, this is a major medical health issue that needs to be addressed. So it's our commitment, put this committee together with a Zoom, get an initial basic little plan together for 2023, and then a much more detailed plan using these grant monies available moving forward. Remember, the school is hiring a new guidance counselor. They're hiring a new social worker. So I would want Dr. Dilger to be involved with the discussions on this and the possibility of assembly programs or health education programs, things that he might want to, get involved with. That's the entire report. Thank you.
Good, thank you. BJ?
Yeah, just a couple of things. So I want to sort of put in our minds for now, and I'll talk to you later, but just that to have a meeting mid-September with Deering Harbor, the government of Deering Harbor. It sounds a funny, government in such a tiny place. But I think we have a couple of issues that we should talk about, mutual concern, and get straightened out. And I scheduled for mid-September, so we all have some time to prepare. Tentatively scheduled. I ran into Patrick today at the IGA, And he just brought up this idea that, exploring the idea of having meetings with the various, lack of a better term, special interest groups. And I think what I would like to suggest to everyone here is that the committees are working on it, and the committees maybe are the point of entry for people's opinions at this point in the process. And maybe we hold off on those larger, broader discussions until a little bit later in the process, when the committees have rough drafts to present, when just later in the process. I just want to kind of put that out there as where we're thinking lately. And then the final thing that I want to sort of, again, think about while we're in budget season is maybe think about getting a planning intern. Just to explore that idea before we finalize. I don't know what it would cost. I think we have to figure out what their remit would be. I mean, it's not easy. It's not simple, but it was brought up to me and I thought, oh, that's maybe not a bad idea. Just there's a bunch of topics they could weigh in on. In this, yeah.
Describe that a little bit more.
Well, somebody who is like from, a well-respected planning institution working on a graduate level degree. MIT, UMass, we have an arrangement, Sylvester Mattner has an arrangement with their archaeology department, that sort of thing. And I just think that it could be useful input and maybe an exploration in a low-cost way of a planning person to be hired, which is thrown around a bit. I'm not saying to hire a full-on professional for next year. That's a big commitment, but to start with an intern, see what they could offer and et cetera. So I just kind of I feel like I'm almost late with that suggestion for this year's budget process, but at least
Put something on paper.
yeah, exactly. I'll make a few phone calls and go forward with that.
You should also explore intermunicipal.
Yes. I know.
Because, certain municipalities
Have
more
staff.
planners than they know what to do with.
Yeah,
So
Okay.
if we'd be willing to pay like a quarter of their salary and have them.
yeah. So I will. I mean, Southold is always
Because-
the one that comes to mind.
Yeah, obviously the East End towns would be preferable.
Right.
Because you got to remember, if we get a planning intern, they're going to have to get trained. The village, I don't have the village, the town and, learn our town code and everything.
Right.
So there'll be a learning curve. And I know obviously other municipal employees would have to learn our code, but it's easier to learn once you know
Yeah,
how to read one.
true. Well, yeah, and I think I think sometimes when you talk about an intern, it almost can seem, like there's somebody in short pants. But, some interns have done already a bunch of, what do I want to say, as work studies and other things where they're sort of exposed. I remember being very impressed with one of the engineering interns we had one summer. I mean, his presentation here was terrific. He was clearly all that and more bells and whistles.
No, that's definitely.
Yeah.
But,
But no, I know what you're, definitely. Shared services, yeah. Great, that's it.
Did Amber?
Community Housing Board met on Thursday. I was surprised there really wasn't any public. Paper was there and one of our regulars on Zoom was there. So, I mean, there's a lot of people out there talking about, we're not open for public input. And here we have like one of the most important committees talking about things and no one comes. So I just want to put that out there. Like, here's an opportunity. One of the discussions was there's misconception out there that we have submitted plans to Suffolk County for various properties. That's not true. We're in the process of trying to submit something. It's not a design. So the pictures that people saw at the last Community Housing Funding Advisory Board, those were just talking points. Like, here's some ideas. Like, what does the community think about apartment looking buildings, about manor house looking buildings, cottage looking buildings? It's supposed to generate discussion. So that's not what is being submitted to Suffolk County. What we're doing to do our homework on the different sites of town-owned properties is to talk to the Suffolk County Board of Health to say, what could we do? Like, what are the limitations that we can put on a property? You know, can we do just a couple of units? Can we do, you know, family apartments? So it's just to understand what our options are so that as we try to move forward with planning and talking to the public and saying, here's what we potentially could do. What do you, community, want us to do?
Like a set of options as opposed to it's wide open. Because
Right, yeah,
it's not wide open.
Yeah.
You know, it's not.
We
Yeah.
have restrictions on what we can do. So, I mean, so that's just one of the things that was discussed. I was reminded that we have to finish looking at the analysis on the landed shared equity program.
Right.
I want to do some number crunching just because after the presentation that Landed did,
9%.
there was a piece, if you got the full 150,000, your equity share is 49%. So it just, if we're going to put this out to our employees, I want to make sure that we are perfectly clear, like this is what you're signing up for. We're not endorsing it, but we also want to make sure we don't mislead anybody, right? So I just wanted that to be on the table. Like we have to go back and visit that. And then, I just have a follow-up with Coco to make sure that the communications on our website are all up to date. So.
And when we revisit Landed, let's not forget to shoot a memo or something over to the school.
Yes.
You know, because I think they are going to move.
Yeah, they
forward.
may be moving forward. And
Yeah.
they've already done some number crunching.
Yeah.
And then the last thing is we have revised community housing board meeting dates because we got the community housing fund advisory board with dates and community housing board. They had been meeting twice a month and realized that since the 5 community housing board members are also on CHFAB while they're doing double duty on the other committee, trying to work on that until that sunsets through the end of the year. They were going to cut the community housing board meetings back down to 1 a month. So it's August 11th, September 15th, October 13th, November 17th, and December 15th. And I think just to also just make it clear, Community Housing Board is the community housing board that's always existed. Their mission is to explore opportunities for what we do with community housing on Shelter Island, whether it's construction, whether it's looking at ADUs, whether it's, looking at floating, zones and, anything that anyone can do to try and provide housing and get input and education. Whereas the Community Housing Fund Advisory Board is strictly for developing our community housing plan. Once that's in place, their role, falls back to nothing or a periodic review every couple of years. So I just wanted to make sure, because I feel like there's been a lot of meeting over, even with the committee. And so we just need to highlight that again, that they are 2 separately charged committees.
Mm-hmm.
Before we adjourn here. Post-compliance grants, our contract is due up in a matter of weeks, not months, weeks. What are we doing? Are we ending the contract? If we end the contract, who is going to monitor rentals here on Shelter Island?
I'd say because it's a budget item. I mean, it's already there. It's already in the budget.
It is already in the budget, but I'm just saying it's $12,132 from a year ago, and it might have increased slightly since then. So.
But now we might have an employee that could use it.
Okay, all right.
Right?
So, yes,
Yeah.
but we need some definitive, let's.
Yeah, I think let's put it up for next week. Everybody get it?
Yes.
Okay, let's put it up for next week.
Yeah. Just looking at Connie Fisher's remarks about this irrigation systems. How about we charge WAC over the next 3 to 4 months to come up with an implementation plan for 1 or 2 or 3 years? You want to do it all at once, implement all in once?
What I asked the WAC to do is
over 2 or 3 year period.
You're talking about irrigation.
WAC is already looking at irrigation and the impacts irrigation has.
Jim, when we did our homework to see, why the grandfathered irrigation system was wrong and eliminated it when it was sunset.
Right.
I went back to the papers and it said that the people that came said there was no science to prove it was needed.
Okay.
So I asked the WAC to give us the.
Okay. 9 Cozy Lane, Stephen, our 30 days are just about up on the second notification. People, it's the house that been neglected for 3 to 4 years, literally falling apart, that's been declared unsafe. Notices went out during the spring, no response, but unfortunately, some of those notices were dated because the information was dated. The inspection was too old. Our town attorney said, no, we need a new inspection. We sent over to the building department. We re-inspected the property, they took new photos, attached them, sent them to Mr. Conroy up in Maine. And people have been now asking me, even though I'm no longer president of the association, what's the plan of attack? So we need to somehow communicate with those people who have been wonderful and patient and kind throughout this entire process of what we're going to do with that property. And again, I think we were shooting for late fall or winter to take care of this house one way or the other. The last thing.
Steven, do you have any update on that or?
Yeah, so the notice was served via certified return receipt. Then we have to give them, I don't remember offhand what the time frame was in the letter, but then once that's up and no action's taken, then we have a formal hearing to decide what we're going to do as far as knock it down or repair it ourselves.
Okay, so the notification served, is that directly to Mr. Conroy with pictures and
Yes.
that, so it was handed, just like we did the first time?
No, it wasn't handed because our code doesn't require in-hand service. It allows us to do service via mail certified return receipt, which we availed ourselves of.
Okay, and did he respond back, return?
We have gotten no response.
Okay, no response back.
And what about the one on Cartwright?
Cartwright, we are dealing with the family.
Okay, you're there already.
This was tough with no response.
Yeah.
And the last thing I had is I would like this week, if we possibly could, Joe, if you're still on there, you and I and Stella, and if anybody else needs to meet, we have a shifting of the goals that we need to address with the Heights property about the project itself. There are a number of significant changes in those goals that need to be discussed. So I'm up for it this week. Let's get it done sooner rather than later. Because if we're not willing to shift some of those goals and agree to the new goals of the project, there's no sense even discussing the project, you know? So I'll leave it to the supervisor to who he wants in on that meeting, but I think it's got to be Jim and Stella for 3 at least. And I'm prepared to do that ASAP.
Joe's not on, so you have to talk to him.
Okay, I talked to him about this already. So he is very comfortable in moving forward with them. I shared the change of goals. I wrote them down. I shared them with you guys. So I'm ready to go with this.
Okay, Steven, do you have anything first?
No, Mr. Supervisor.
Amber, anything from your end? No? Okay, we'll open it up to the public. Bob Cohn had signed up to speak. Bob?
Damn. I'll let it go. You know, it doesn't go on the website.
Can I speak? Sign sheet. You can speak, John will speak.
Okay.
3 minutes.
Okay.
Your microphone thing?
No.
No, you don't need it. It picks up right here.
Yeah.
If you just stay close enough to that podium, it'll pick up.
So I just want to inquire about this offer from supervisor and the town board to meet with the groups who have voiced concerns. Have a presentation, perhaps answer questions. So I didn't hear anything about it. Okay,
Listening.
sorry?
You weren't listening. I just mentioned it.
Okay, well, there was 2 hours of an hour and a half, so perhaps you could replay.
I did. I said, I think that our somewhat loose consensus here is that we think your concerns are better addressed at the committee level now. And as we wait for the committees to get further along in their process, that's the place where we should engage a dialogue with the broader public, not just the special interest groups, but the
Okay, so basically there is a change from what was reported in the newspaper and what was offered at the last meeting, correct?
I don't know. I just
Wasn't
said,
really offered, it was a discussion.
yeah, and I said I wanted to bring it up again today. I shouldn't engage like this.
So the report that Mr. Siller said he would talk to the set of the B&B plans for Mr. Durrell's group and others. bring their questions to a work session or even hold 2 or 3 work sessions to answer questions. So has that
That's-
changed now?
No, that's correct. That's what was said. But then BJ and I said we'd like to discuss it at a work session before we decide to make that offer because I'm not necessarily sure that I agree with that option.
Okay,
So
so the decision has been made to.
it hasn't been made.
Decision has been made.
No,
No,
no.
there's no,
We're discussing it.
no, we haven't made a decision yet.
Oh, so.
So right now, the town board is suggesting that you have several meetings, several venues to bring up issues regarding community housing. One being the listening session, which is what?
There's the work session this weekend for the
Community housing.
thank you, community housing plan. So attend that, give your input. We, the town board, are not writing the community housing plan. That board with their consultant is writing the housing plan. So they're the people to discuss that with.
There's some misunderstanding because there's an attempt to lump all the groups together that we're somehow focused on community housing. Our group is not focused on community housing. Okay, we have broader issues which we're concerned about. And
What's your group again? I forget. I'm sorry, what's your group again?
Friends Chapels Harbor.
Oh, good. I'll look it up.
is preservation of island's character and protection of their environment, specifically aquifer. So we're concerned about things like mass, high density developments, whether it's residential or commercial. Okay, and residential could be community or could be private. So those are broader issues. So I don't know why you're sending me back to community housing. We have no interest.
Well, it wasn't actually.
Maybe it would be a comprehensive plan.
That was the second half, but I didn't want to
Well, we
interrupt.
definitely are interested.
So I would say, go to all the comprehensive plan meetings.
Yeah.
Engage where you need to engage. If there's questions, concerns, I mean, all the concerns that you gave us, we did
Yeah.
incorporate into the plan. We are listening to you.
Oh, okay, there was one public session that we attended, but this is not the issue. The issue is we have broader concerns which don't fit. I don't see a purpose of going to community housing, not community housing, but comprehensive plan. The group added, vision statement or something or other, okay? Where we thought our input was important, we came and raised the issue about floating historical zone.
Right.
But it's a small issue. Have a much bigger picture issues, which we would like to raise and have a dialogue.
Okay.
It seems there is no dialogue, and it's the same thing that like when we early on tried to reach you, and Mrs. Ian Fola, we're told that there was no interest meeting, okay? So now.
Yeah, can I just, no, I can't because your 3 minutes is up. So I would, what I would love to do is why don't you send me an email of your issues that you would like to discuss.
My issues are printed in short report.
I don't want to read your ad. I want to read an email from you with the list of issues you'd like to discuss. And then we'd be more than happy to discuss it with the town board to see what the proper venue is. We have a million and one committees addressing all different issues. And they have all public meetings where you have opportunities to be heard.
Yeah.
But you're right, there may be some areas that your concerns are not addressed. And then we can streamline that with other groups because as was mentioned at the last meeting, we could reach out to other groups and try to get some consistency of questions and issues and then have broad meetings on that if the town board decides it. So I would just love for you to put in an email the issues you'd like to discuss.
Okay. Like I said, again, we don't see willingness to have exchange of opinions. Okay?
Well, first of all, your time's up. Thank you. I'll respond.
That's another example.
Well, it's an example. I mean, every town on Long Island has 3 minutes speaking, if you want to check. And most of them don't speak at work sessions. Shelter Island's one of the only towns that provides input during a work session. Okay, so you can have your seat and I'll continue. Thank you.
Okay.
I would say that you want input from the town, and we're trying to explain to you that we have committees dealing with each issue that you present in your ads. If you don't want to go to the committees, I am still open to meeting with you because I would like to go one by one, each fallacy that was in those ads. But that's my opinion.
Yeah, I would like to back up what Supervisor just said and what the town attorney just said. I would be very interested as one person on the town board to have you in an email specifically cite your 3, 4, 5 major focus points that you want to discuss. And then give us the opportunity to set up something which would perhaps can address those things the best way we can.
And it could be as simple as putting, like, if I get your list of issues and the other organization's list of issues, come up with a common theme and put that as an agenda item on a work session. So you'll have plenty of notice, you come in and, we could handle it that way. Or if the town board so chooses, have a more broad town hall type meeting to really explore issues.
But this.
But my 3 minutes are out, but that's a perfect example, okay, of lack of channels of communication and the limitation to 3 minutes.
You don't want to come to the committees to communicate with each specific issue.
There's 22 committees on various.
It's not important to each and the ones that are important to you.
Thank you, Supervisor. Just to follow up on Jan's comment, we hear again today an invitation to come in and have this discussion with the board. And then this is what happened last week. We reported in the newspaper that you had accepted, and apparently Mr. Carley said he would actually reach out to these 3 groups to come back to have a discussion about how to go forward with this. Now, I had asked back in March for equal time to speak directly to the town board because the town board is hearing directly from the Community Housing Board and the Community Housing Advisory Fund Board in 20-minute sessions where they were giving presentations directly to the board. I asked for equal time for that, and you said, sorry, you only get 3 minutes. You heard Bill Dara last week talk about that the 3 minutes directly with board time is not enough. You also heard Mr. Dara say that it's not convenient for people, especially for him, he's certainly not retired, to go to all of these meetings. Now, I understand they attended the Comprehensive Planning Committee, but they don't always deal with the issues that we all specifically have. We may have differences in what we are focusing on, these 3 groups at least, but there's a lot of overlap among these 3 groups. What I would recommend is to follow up on what you said, Cherry, is if you wanted to go point by point, and I don't know why we have to send the town council a letter, the ads speak for themselves. If you'd like to go point by point through the letters, there's 2 ways to do this. You can either let us each give like a 20-minute presentation in which you can ask us all the questions you want on an individual by individual basis, or you could go through the ads and say, okay, Bob, your group said this. I have a problem with that. And Bob would like to see your response to that and give me 20 minutes or the 2 of us among the public here, enough time to have a back and forth dialogue on this. Providing information into a committee at some lower level, a committee that was appointed by you and another committee who fired me. Okay, and you claim your reasons why you think you fired me. I have my reasons why I think you fired me. But clearly, Jim Colligan, after I was fired or the day I was fired, stated that my views had diverged from the town's views on community housing, and therefore it wasn't appropriate to be on the committee. So you eliminated people who have divergent views from committees. Why should we bother to go to those committees and present our views? So this has to be done. There used to be town board meetings on, remember, the short-term rentals. There were 2 meetings in the school auditorium, 2 meetings where the entire town had an opportunity to discuss a town-wide issue. And I don't think TDRs and affordable housing is any different or less important than the short-term rental issue. So why don't we have a town hall meeting as Bill Dara had asked for? He asked for that. You came back and said, no, we'll do it in the work sessions. And now you're saying, no, we're going to put it to a committee. And when those committees are done, we're going to be here in October, 3 weeks before the election. And most of the people on the aisle would have gone home already. So I think it's unfair for you to be postponing.
Okay, thank you. Your time's up, Bob. I would, let me just, Jim, 2 things. One, you can have a seat. Thank you. First of all, you say we bring people, advocates in, and they have 20 minutes. We bring town committee people in. And we discuss an item on the agenda. We don't bring the public in to generally discuss what their opinion is for 20 minutes. To go to the SDR meetings at the school, they were open after the town board had plans in place, what they wanted to present to the town. That's exactly what we do. When we have something to present to the town, then we invite the public in for public input.
They're called public
I'd
hearings.
like to respond. So all three of you. I'm speaking personally.
Wait, don't say all the things.
Okay, all right. Okay, okay. For the two of you then. Personally, the ads that you put in the paper, I personally do not want to respond to those ads. As you suggested, it's there, read it, and then respond to it. And let me finish. The town attorney gave you an option of trying to take 5 minutes of your time, 10 minutes maximum. I mean, I spend days on this stuff. 10 minutes of your time to articulate and to put down 1 through 2, 1 through 5, whatever your concerns are, put it down on a piece of paper, just like we get every week. I think I cited Connie Fisher today a number of times where she had a concern about, sprinkler cisterns and sprinkler systems and things of that nature. It was done in a constructive way. She didn't take an ad and put it in the paper. I received it very well. It was constructive in nature, and she's asking for us to respond back to it. And I think we did an appropriate job of responding back. I would like the option to be able to identify those top topics that you think are very important. Have the board, we can discuss them, get a plan of strategy, whether we meet, whether we ask you to go to meetings or we have a special meeting. That's something that we need to discuss. I'm not so sure I'm on board. I might be different. I might have a different point of view. I would want to improve communication. I would want to take every party that has a legitimate concern and voices them in a caring, constructive way and address them. I do not value the ads in the paper. I find them distasteful. They're not accurate necessarily. And it doesn't grab my attention. A good solid email to us would grab my attention and command my respect. And I'm a public servant and I serve you. So I would be willing to come back and to do that. The best way that the 5 of us would agree to do that, which is open for discussion amongst us. But we'll figure that out. Thank you.
Pam, I see you have your hand up.
She's on Zoom.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, no. We'll do Pam first.
Hold on,
Yes,
Pam.
we'll do Pam first.
Let's do the room first.
Oh,
All right, you can come up.
Okay.
Charlotte.
Well,
Just identify yourself, please.
I was interested
Can
in
you identify yourself?
Charlotte Taylor. And I was interested in the community housing. But really, I think what I want to say is that we do live in a democratic country, and I think a democratic attitude should be primary at every level of government. And why would somebody want to come here when everyone becomes defensive and is rude to them when they are expressing their opinion? The point of a democratic government is that you bring ideas and experience from all parts of your public to the table, and that's where you get your best decisions. I see that you're very diligent here and you know a lot and so forth, but I think no person who wants to speak should ever be the butt of, exhaustion, and 3 minutes is not long enough to talk about anything seriously. It's superficial. And I just want to say that democratic government works much better than an autocratic government where people are talking amongst each other and presenting the way things are going to be. I see these gentlemen's point of view. I agree with it. I want to say also that from watching, I think, first of all, committees and meetings should be televised.
They are.
I don't know if all of them are
not all of them,
committees.
no.
Talking about 22 committees.
Yeah, we have,
You're not going to get people to come to the meeting if you sincerely want that.
but it's available by
They're on
Zoom.
Zoom.
Yeah.
That's what I meant. Yeah.
Okay, well, I watch you on cable television. And I think it would be worthwhile hiring a professional to videotape your meetings And it shouldn't just be certain ones. It should be all of them. Because how you stir up interest in a subject and come to the best conclusion, which everyone will be living with for hundreds of years. For example, because a precedent will be set with this housing situation. And depending on where the money comes from, for example, is where people can come and live here. Now, if you want sincerely housing for EMTs, fire people, and police, you shouldn't be taking federal money, federal dollars or state dollars, because people can come from all kinds of places to come here. So you have to know where's the money coming from. And it's not always the best idea to reach your hand out to the federal government or even the state government. You can try to find other funding. I also want to say that you cannot clearly see the people who are speaking with the equipment you have now. You cannot clearly hear the people speaking with the way you're running things now. And I just would like to say, because you have a beautiful, wonderful island. My father lived here 100 years ago as a child. And I've been spending the summer here at a friend's house. And I will say this place is absolutely fantastic. It's a place to be cherished, and it's an island, so you have control over it.
Thank you.
So I want to say it's a pleasure to be here. I like very much the balance of open space. I think it's critical, and I would hate to see you bring people into the community that are going to change the nature of the community in a way that will not make you or your children or your grandchildren happy.
Thank you.
Okay. Can I just make a comment? There are other avenues to reach the town board and reach the town officials. You can email. You can schedule a meeting with the town attorney, the engineer, any other official at any time. You can schedule a meeting one-on-one with the town board member. You could schedule a meeting with less than a quorum with the town board member. You have that ability. I'm sorry, your time's up, but I'm just, what I'm saying is, I'm saying that to everybody. We want to be open, but like for work session, can you sit down?
Interesting.
Please.
You're not just legal advice.
Or is this six board members sit down? It's legal advice, actually.
Thank you. All right, please sit down.
Not attending meetings. So I'm directing.
You're being disruptive. Can you please sit down?
Okay. Pam, did you have something you wanted to say?
Yes, hi, everybody. Just wanted to clarify with 42 Gardner's Bay, then you're not going to do the Joe Fenora report and you're just going to take the CAC's recommendation and move forward with that? Right? The
Yes.
So there's
Yes.
so the public hearing won't reopen or anything on that. Okay. So then, Mr. Supervisor, the other thing you mentioned today was that ADUs were going to be part of the existing structures on the island. And it's my understanding the state legislation that didn't pass the beginning of the year on these accessory dwelling units, they were any imaginable form of attachments to buildings, garages, over garages, so we don't really have a definition for accessory dwelling units, and I'd appreciate one going forward, so I understand what it is you're exactly talking about.
I agree 100% with you, Pam. I think the whole issue needs to be addressed. The governor, her intentions meant well, but it was ridiculous the way she put it out there. It was just a broad brush across everything. So I think we need to identify, our definition of accessory dwelling units. They are existing units already here. And I just want to start the discussion and get it going.
Yeah, I just wanted to see where you were going to start, where your beginning point was. And then my only other question is with the comprehensive plan task force, there has not been a member from the planning board on that task force for almost a month now when Mr. Karen resigns. Is that necessary for that task force to have a planning board member in order to go forward?
Yes, we're appointing a planning board member. We were talking to the different members on the planning board first to see who would be interested in participating. And we just need to write up a resolution appointing someone. But that didn't make it in the last meeting. So
We do have someone.
But we do have someone
Yeah.
on the planning board.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, because I wasn't sure if you were looking for that to be the new hire or not, or pick someone who's already on the board. Okay, great. That's all I needed to know. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you. Julia, you have anything?
Nothing for me. Thanks, Jerry.
I'm fine, thank you, Jerry.
Okay, any other comments from the Zoom audience? Okay, I'm gonna make a motion. Did I sign?
Yes, I did.
Okay, can we go into a special meeting? We sign favor to do it, so we'll close the work session and open a special meeting. I'll start with the resolutions. Be it resolved that the supervisor hereby authorized and directed to expend the sum of $5,106.82 from the A4540.200 ambulance equipment account. Stryker sale, post office box 93308, Chicago, Illinois 60673. For the 4-year preventative maintenance agreement for the Lucas CPR compression device for the term May 23rd, 2023 through May 22nd, 2027. So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
For the next one, be it resolved that the supervisor is hereby authorized and directed to expend the sum of $80,936.23 from the DB 5112.444 Highway Repair and Improvement CHIPS and the sum of $4,800 from the DB 5110.445 Highway Repair and Improvement to Portosini Asphalt, PO Box 1281, Cutchogue, New York, for the asphalt delivered and applied to Ward Road, asphalt delivered and applied to Sunshine Road and Thomas Avenue, and tree cuts and preparation work performed June 20th, 2022. So moved.
Second,
All those in favor?
Aye.
Valentino wetlands permit.
No,
No,
the
no,
one
you got
Oh.
to resolve. Budget.
Oh,
You have it?
Third one, number 3.
I don't have it.
I have it.
I got it.
Okay, go ahead, Jim.
Be it resolved, the supervisor is hereby authorized and directed to expend the sum of $6,512.02 to Lamb and Barnowski LLP at 534 Broad Hollow Road, Suite 210, PO Box 9034, Melville, New York, 11747 for professional services rendered through June 30th, 2022. So moved.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye. We'd like to reopen the Valentino wetlands permit application. Hearing,
Yes,
the hearing.
and that was,
So we're going to make a motion to.
Wait, I am just gonna explain it.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
yeah, so the reason we kept this hearing open was because Matt Sherman was not available to weigh in on it. You had another additional comment that you wanted to give us. I believe in the,
This is the airport delay.
this is Valentino and
No, I just want to take it. We have to make a motion to reopen in a second. All in favor to reopen. It's logistic, like procedural.
Right, BJ made a motion that we reopen the hearing.
Second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
got it. Okay. So now, and I'm trying to remember exactly what the open item was that we, Matt, you wanted to weigh in on, or you just wanted to?
No, it was, the only thing we were waiting on was the CAC comments. I had submitted a revised site plan on June 13th, which incorporated those CAC comments. So we were perfectly happy with what the CAC had to say and agreed with them and had no problem incorporating those. It was relocation of a sanitary cleanout, relocation of an emergency generator, both of those outside of the wetlands regulated area. And then there's an existing AC unit that currently is just within the regulated area, and that when that unit needs to be replaced, it will be done so outside of the regulated area. So those were all perfectly acceptable to the property owner. So we were just hoping to close the hearing and move on with the discussion.
Thank you, Glenn.
That was it. And that was what I had here.
Okay,
That was from June 13th.
That's fine.
Yeah.
so we'll close the hearing.
Mhm.
Okay, we're gonna close that hearing
Great, thank you.
and
Just make them.
make a motion to close the hearing.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that's it for the meeting. I'm gonna make a motion. We leave the special meeting and go into executive session, discuss a potential land acquisition and collective bargaining negotiations. Second,
Second.
all those in